I don't think you'll ever be able to convince me that playing an FCS school, at least a good FCS school, will ever be a good idea. If you win, whoop-de-doo, you beat an FCS school. Nobody views it as a wow, you beat an FCS school that won the national championship last year or played deep into the playoffs. Nobody cares. They don't look at that and go you know what? That's a strong non-conference win. They don't. They say you played an FCS school. And if you lose, it's worse. If you lose, you lost to an FCS school. There is no advantage to it unless you're that hard up for cash that you need a game and you paid somebody $300,000 or $400,000, or maybe the going rate is up to $600,000 for an FCS program to come to you instead of a $1.5 million for a group of 5. There's no advantage to playing an FCS school. There is no winning. There's only losing. And yet every year, FBS schools, and the overwhelming majority, I think there's 15 FBS schools this year that are not playing an FCS opponent. 15. So the trend continues to happen, and every year we see some FCS school beat an FBS opponent. Now, it's generally not a Power 5 opponent, but it does happen year after year after year after year, and I can't help but wonder, why? If you were to walk up and down the street and ask somebody, hey, what is the biggest upset in college football history? More often than not, you're going to get the answer, Appalachian State beating Michigan. It was an FCS school who beat a top 5 opponent. There was no advantage for Michigan to play that game. Appalachian State was coming off FCS national championships. Nobody looked at it on the schedule and was like, wow, Michigan got FCS national champion on the schedule. That's impressive. It's just another non-conference game until you lose. So I think there are a couple of non-conference games. Both of them happen in week 1, where an FCS school is going to, and I think maybe should, have a Power 5 program on upset alert. And I realize that sounds preposterous, but it happens every year. So the first one to me is I guess I've made myself, I don't understand the idea of scheduling these games. In week 1, Oklahoma State plays South Dakota State. Now, Oklahoma State played in the Big 12 championship game last year. That's a nice little it's a nice thing to hang your hat on. South Dakota State has won 29 games in a row. They won the national championship in FCS. Oklahoma State should be pretty good. They should be a top 25 team. But I think at times they've been kind of slow starters throughout the season. I think if things go really well for Oklahoma State in 2024, Ollie Gordon could be a Heisman Trophy finalist. But you have to beat South Dakota State. You can't tell me that, one, Oklahoma State couldn't afford to pay a group of 5 school that probably isn't as good as South Dakota State. There's this misconception that there is this delineation because there's FBS and FCS, that the worst FBS school is better than the best FCS school. And that is inherently false. There is an overlap there of, you could probably argue that South Dakota State, or the FCS national champion, North Dakota State, for a damn near a decade, they might not have been a top 25 program, but they weren't the 135th best program in college football. They might have been the 45th best program in college football in Division I. The idea that the FCS national champion It's the same as, like the team who wins the NIT is the 69th best team in the country. Nice. No, they're not more often than not. But because that's where we draw the line in our heads, South Dakota State, very good. Season opening game against the FCS national champions. Why is this game happening? I don't know. But don't be surprised if that's a game that South Dakota State can win. They're not going to beat the brakes off of Oklahoma State. But if they can keep it close, that is a game that South Dakota State has every business of being in until the fourth quarter and having an opportunity to win that game. And if they don't, if Oklahoma State plays really well, I think that probably bodes really well for Oklahoma State. But if they don't, it doesn't mean a whole lot either. I just know that we can talk about Oklahoma State's season as we're probably looking at them as a top 20 team to start the season. And if they lose to an FCS opponent, regardless of whether or not that team won the national championship last year and could very well likely win it again, all the discussion is going to be is, well, hell, Oklahoma State's not that good. They lost to an FCS school. There is no context there. There is no more greater information. It's just simply that. They lost to an FCS school. So I don't know why you would even schedule the game. South Dakota State brings back basically the FCS Heisman winner. There's a lot riding against them in this game. And so I just don't know how I can possibly wrap my head around the idea of, like, if you're going to play an FCS school, play one that sucks. Because, again, nobody's going to look at that. Like, if you are on the borderline of the college football playoff, the selection committee is not going to go, well, they played an FCS school who won the national championship last year and made the tournament this year. In the committee's eyes, is that going to be better than playing Toledo, who's going to MAC? No, it's not. Or whatever Conference USA school, whatever Sun Belt school, Mountain West school you want to pick. There's much less chance of losing that game, and you don't lose as much if you do lose that game. And then there's another Big 12 game, Big 12 team playing an FCS opponent to open the season, and it's North Dakota State at Colorado. I realize that people are high on Colorado again, and I don't know if Deion Sanders being there just makes them like the modern-day Notre Dame, where just by proxy you get to be a top 25, 20, 15, 10 team every year just from name recognition. I saw Joel Klatt, the Fox College football analyst, say on Colin Cowherd's show the other day, basically like, don't be surprised if Colorado plays for the Big 12 championship. Be surprised if Colorado plays for the Big 12 championship, okay? The idea that because they went from dreadful in 2022 to sucks a little less in 2023 does not mean they're going to jump there from 4-8 to 10-2. It's just not likely to be in the cards for them yet. That doesn't mean that Deion Sanders isn't doing a pretty good job there, etc. It just means that they're not good enough yet. If Colorado can make a bowl game in 2024, that's going to be a good season for them, because they've got, I think, 6 games against ranked opponents to start the season. You get a non-conference game. Your non-conference for Colorado is actually kind of tough, where you're playing Colorado State, rivalry game, Nebraska, and North Dakota State. And I know North Dakota State hasn't been the juggernaut that it has been in FCS, where it just wins national championships by walking off the bus, but they're still really good. They're still great defensively, and I think they're kind of everything that maybe Colorado isn't, where they're going to be really fundamentally sound. They're not going to beat themselves. They're going to play the exact style that they want to play, all of those things. Also, North Dakota State, all-time 9-4 against FBS schools. Like that alone should be enough to, like, we're not scheduling these people. They beat Iowa. What was it? It's probably longer than I think it 5 or 6 years ago, when Iowa was a top 15 team in the country. North Dakota State is really good. In Colorado isn't going to be a world beater by any stretch of the imagination in 2024, in my opinion. So I think you're setting yourself up for failure to start your season off on a really bad, sour note, that if you can be outcoached, starting it off on a Thursday night against an FCS school with a national TV audience is about as worst case scenario as it gets. And that's just two of the matchups between FBS and FCS schools where it's a real potential that an FCS school can win that game. And not just like, well, anybody can win the game. That's why they play it, huh? South Dakota State and North Dakota State can win games against Big 12 opponents in a one-on-one. This is the only time we're going to do it. Now, if you threw South Dakota State or North Dakota State up to the Big 12 from where they are right now and made them play a 9-game conference schedule, yeah, it's probably not going to go very well. But in week number 1, in game number 1, anything can go. And I don't think it's unreasonable to think that those two schools can win Power 5 games against Power 5 conference opponents to start 2024. So I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying don't be surprised if it does. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content that we're pumping out. If you are listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. See you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily